Mike Tyson made over $400 million in his boxing career, but by the age of 40, he was $23 million in debt and declared bankruptcy. MC Hammer, in the early 1990s, had an estimated net worth of $33 million, roughly $70 million in today's money, but only a few years later, he filed for bankruptcy with $13 million in debt. Most people think that debt is what happens when you don't earn enough, but the truth is far more uncomfortable than that, because this exact same pattern destroys ordinary people every single day. So in this video, we're going deep into one of the most destructive money patterns in human behavior. Why so many people stay broke even when on paper they make enough money, and how emotional spending, status chasing, and modern consumer culture quietly traps millions of people inside a financial cycle they don't often even realize they're trapped in. What happened to these millionaires reveals something disturbing about human psychology. We don't spend money rationally, we spend it emotionally. Every purchase is really two transactions. There's the obvious one, exchanging money for an object, but deep inside us, there's another transaction happening at the same time, exchanging money for a feeling. When Mike Tyson bought exotic tigers, he wasn't buying pets, he was buying the feeling of being untouchable. When MC Hammer employed over 200 people around him, he wasn't buying services, he was buying the feeling of being important. And when you buy the last thing you think will finally fix your life, you're usually not buying an object, you're buying control, completion, relief. You see, the human brain treats these emotional purchases as survival necessities, because deep in our psychology, status, belonging, and feeling in control don't feel optional. They feel necessary. And this is where debt becomes dangerous, because while the rational mind says, I can't afford this, the emotional mind quietly whispers, I can't afford not to have this. And this is where the infinite debt trap begins, because for most people, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually. Let's say someone gets their first serious job, making $50,000 a year. At first, they feel rich, a nicer apartment, better clothes, dinners out, maybe even a car payment. But within months, something changes. The apartment once felt luxurious now feels normal. The clothes no longer feel special. The lifestyle that once felt like success now feels like bare minimum. So when they start earning more, naturally, they upgrade again. Bigger apartment, better car, more expensive habits. But the feeling never lasts, because they were never really chasing the objects. They were chasing the emotional state the objects temporarily created. Now, this is called hedonic adaptation. Humans quickly adapt to improved circumstances. What once felt luxurious becomes normal. What once felt enough becomes not enough. But here's where it becomes psychologically dangerous. People adapt to lifestyle, but not to their identity. Once someone sees themselves as the kind of person who lives in a luxury apartment, downgrading no longer feels like a financial decision. It feels like failure. So obviously they stay, even when they can't afford it, even when it's quietly destroying their future. Now, this is why athletes, entertainers, and high earners still end up broke, because money isn't the real problem. The psychology is. And unfortunately, the modern culture quietly makes this even worse. In 1970, the average American home was around 1,500 square feet. Today, it's over 2,600. Cars became more expensive, vacations became more elaborate, wedding costs exploded, but people didn't become financially calmer. They became more anxious, because the baseline for normal kept moving. What previous generations considered a luxury, modern society slowly rebranded as necessity. And this didn't happen by accident. If you look closer, modern marketing rarely sells products. It sells identity. For example, Apple doesn't just sell technology, it sells creativity. Nike doesn't sell shoes, it sells transformation. Mercedes doesn't just sell cars, it sells status. Every single advertisement quietly asks you the same question: who could you become if you owned this? And for someone who feels insecure, invisible, or emotionally incomplete, that message becomes incredibly powerful. So, the question is, how do you break the pattern? How do you stop repeating the same financial behaviors and finally become free again? First, you need to understand something uncomfortable. This isn't really about money. The people most vulnerable to emotional spending are often trying to compensate for emotional insecurity somewhere else in their life. Someone overlooked at work buys expensive clothes to feel respected. Someone feeling socially rejected leases a luxury car to feel admired. Someone emotionally empty fills their home with purchases trying to feel complete. Now, psychologists call this compensatory consumption. When people feel powerless in one area of life, they overspend in another to regain sense of control, balance, if you like. But the dangerous part is, it works. The purchases really do create relief, confidence, excitement, escape. So the brain learns spending equals emotional relief, and once the pathway is established, it becomes incredibly difficult to break. This is why credit cards are so psychologically dangerous, because they remove friction. You see, previous generations often had to save for months, sometimes even years, for major purchases. That delay gave emotional impulses time to fade. Unfortunately, credit card removes that delay. People can instantly buy the identity they want now and deal with the consequences later. Now, the industry understands this perfectly. Debt is never marketed as debt. It's marketed as freedom, opportunity, empowerment. But what they don't advertise is that debt doesn't just cost money. It costs options. People trapped in debt often become trapped in lifestyles they can no longer sustain. They stay in jobs they hate, avoid risks, work overtime, sacrifice family time because they have no other choice. The very purchases that were supposed to create freedom quietly removed it. But it gets worse. The psychology becomes even darker. People begin spending to cope with the stress created by the debt itself. Retail therapy becomes emotional escape. Luxury experiences become temporary relief. The debt creates stress. The stress creates spending. The spending creates more debt, and the cycle never ends. But perhaps the most destructive part of this entire process is what it does to your identity. When someone repeatedly spends money they don't have on things they don't need, they slowly stop trusting themselves. I'm irresponsible, I'm terrible with money, I'll never change. And once that becomes identity rather than behavior, change becomes much harder, because changing behavior is difficult, but changing identity is terrifying. And this reveals the most uncomfortable truth about staying broke. It's rarely just about money. Debt is what happens when people try to purchase emotional security externally instead of building it internally. This is why simply earning more rarely solves the problem. Because the problem often isn't income, it's the emotional void driving the spending. Mike Tyson didn't go broke because he didn't earn enough. He went broke trying to feel emotional emptiness with symbols of power. MC Hammer didn't collapse financially because he lacked money. He collapsed trying to maintain an identity that required endless spending. And millions of ordinary people quietly fall into the exact same trap every single day. Because the real danger isn't the debt itself, it's the belief that external purchases can solve internal insecurities. But objects can't permanently create self-worth. Money can't permanently create emotional security. And status can't permanently remove insecurity. The people who break free from this cycle aren't the ones who learn better budgeting techniques. They're often ones who learn to find emotional security from sources that don't require spending, who build identity from achievements, hobbies, and new experiences rather than acquisitions. Because in the end, people don't stay broke because they spend too much money. They stay broke because they're trying to buy something that was never for sale in the first place: their own self-worth. Hey, Jacob here. First of all, thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. Now, if this video resonated with you, I would highly recommend to watch this one next. It goes even deeper into the hidden psychology behind money and human behavior. And if you want more videos like this one, consider subscribing. Now, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care.